Hello viewers, and welcome to another installment of the LOTR LCG Progression Series, a production by Cardboard of the Rings, the bi-weekly podcast about the Lord of the Rings, the card game, which is a living card game by Fantasy Flight Games. My name is Mitch.
And I'm Matthew.
And today we're going to be taking a look at the third and final scenario of the Hobbit on the Doorstep Saga Expansion. This is the Battle of Five Armies, so Matthew, why don't you wrap up our story?
Enraged by the theft of his treasure, Smaug launched a savage attack on Lanktown to revenge himself on those he deemed responsible. There, in an unforeseen turn of events, Smaug was slain by Bard the Bowman when an old thrush brought him the knowledge of the dragon's weak spot, learned from Bilbo Baggins. In the aftermath of Smaug's death and the ruin of Esgaroth, the armies of men, elves, and dwarves converged on the Lonely Mountain to lay their claim to the dragon's hoard. But before their dispute could come to unhappy blows, an even greater threat descended suddenly from the north. An army of orcs and wargs had come to take the treasure of Erebor for themselves.
Alright, so now that we've covered our story, why don't we go ahead and take a look at our respective player decks. So in this video, I'm going to be running something very similar to what I did for Flies and Spiders. I've got Dane bolstering all dwarves on the table, Thorin Oakenshield to accelerate my resources, and Ori to provide that oh-so-important card draw, especially since we might be doing some random discarding during this scenario. I've got a host of different leadership and lore dwarf allies. I've got card advantage effects like King Under the Mountain, Legacy of Durin, Steward of Gondor to accelerate my resources, Cram and Lure of Moria to provide additional action advantage, and then a number of other powerful effects that should hopefully help me to pull my weight in this scenario. But what about yourself, Matthew?
Well, I'm using my trusty Beargond and Glorfindel, but adding one of my favorite heroes, Bard the Bowman. I'm including a host of allies to help with battle and siege questing, and I'm using a few more events than I normally do. Goblin Cleaver, Straight Shot, and Quick Strike, all in an attempt to hopefully dispatch these hordes of orcs before they get overwhelming.
Well, now that we've covered our player decks, why don't we go ahead and shuffle our decks and draw our opening hand of 6 cards. So, maybe for the first time in this series, I'm going to go ahead and make you the first player, and I'm going to go ahead and draw my 6 cards.
My hand's pretty good. I think I'm going to keep it.
For my opening hand, it's certainly nothing special. There's some effects I just can't stomach throwing away, so hopefully I can make it work, but definitely not the best. But now that we've covered that, why don't we go ahead and take a look at our quest cards. So starting with Quest Phase 1A, this reads Search the Encounter Deck for Bolg and add it to the staging area. Then we've got our traditional Shuffle the Encounter Deck and reveal 1 encounter card per player. So Bolg is going to be the primary antagonist of this scenario. Our victory is dependent upon killing him. He's 2 threats, 6 attack, 3 defense, 8 hit points. He's entirely immune to player card effects. He cannot leave the staging area, and as soon as we actually transition into our first quest phase, the first goblin revealed each round gains Surge. Because this is a Saga expansion scenario, you can see we have a host of different treasure cards out here in front of us, so not only the 3 weapons that we won during We Must Away ere break of day, we've also got Bilbo's Magic Ring that we got during Flies and Spiders, and we also have our Mithril Shirt and our Thrower's Hunting Bow that we were lucky enough to burgle during the Lonely Mountain. During the setup portion of this scenario is when we actually add these to our decks. So Matthew and I have already decided on which of these we want. Let's go ahead and shuffle those into our decks, and then let's go ahead and do that revealing of 1 encounter card per player. So hopefully this isn't going to be anything too nasty, so we can get an early foothold against the encounter deck. Encounter card number 1 is going to be until the end of the round. Exhausted characters get -1 will, attack, and defense. But of course, there's not a round currently active, so this is going to be a freebie. So let's get rid of Weighed Down. Encounter card number 2 is going to be Gundabad Archer. So each player deals 2 damage to a character he controls. I'm going to go ahead and put my damage on Ori. Now, it looks like we've done that. Let's go ahead and flip our current quest card to Phase 1B, and this is what's really unique about this scenario. So when revealed, put Stage 2, 3, and 4 into play at the same time, then remove this stage from play. So we've got 3 different quest cards here in front of us. At the very beginning of each round, we have to pick one of these to become our current quest card, and each of them is different. So each of them has a different keyword, or lack thereof, and each of them has some sort of effect that triggers at the end of the round if there are no progress tokens on it. So, Quest Phase 2 is traditional willpower questing, and at the end of the round we have to discard a random card from hand. Quest Phase 3 is battle, and at the end of the round we have to add the topmost enemy in the discard pile back into the staging area. And Quest Phase 4 is siege, and at the end of the round we have to discard all resources. So it's going to be up to us to pick what order we think is best. And only when we have 8 or more progress tokens on each of these can we finally transition to our final quest phase, which is going to be 5B. So we have to search the encounter deck, put 1 copy of a Bodyguard of Bolg into play, which prevents our main enemy here, Bolg, from taking damage. So once those are dealt with, then we can kill Bolg, and as soon as he is destroyed, we have won the scenario. But there is a long way to go before we get there, so shall we go ahead and pick one of these quest cards to be our current quest?
Sure.
I'm thinking the best one is probably this battle, just to prevent enemies from being added back to the staging area. So I'll put 1 resource token on that to demonstrate it's our current quest card. And with that said, why don't we go ahead and do our resources for our first resource phase, and what are you going to do for planning?
Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is spend the Bilbo resource and look for a treasure card.
Alright.
And I am going to take Glamdring, and I'm going to put that onto Bard.
Alright.
And then I'm going to pay 1 for a Light of Valinor for Glorfindel.
Fantastic.
And that's all I can do.
Alright, for myself, this is definitely a little unconventional, but I'm going to go ahead and do 1 lore resource for an Erebor Record Keeper, but I'm going to do both of my leadership resources, and I'm going to go ahead and play a Hardy Leadership on Thorin Oakenshield here. Next turn I'll be able to do quite a bit more, but I think that covers it for the time being.
Okay.
For quest phase, this is going to be battle that we're up against. What do we want to send?
Well, I will send 4, if you want to exhaust Bilbo for me.
Alright. I think what I'm going to do, since I don't have any weapon to beef me up, is I'm going to go ahead and send a grand total of 8, which is going to make 12 between the two of us. So let's see what we reveal. Encounter card number 1 is, first of all, Surge, and then this reads, choose a different quest to be the current quest until the end of the round if able. So let's see here. I suppose since we have next to nothing siege-wise committed to the quest, we might as well swap that to the Eastern Spur. So I don't think our number committed to the quest changes. Actually, my Erebor Record Keeper boosts it to 13. But this, of course, does surge. So let me get rid of that card, and encounter card number 1 is going to be Gundabad Climber. So, first of all, this triggers that when revealed, remove 1 progress from every quest stage in play, but there are no progress at the moment, and because of Bolg, this surges. So it surges to a Hidden Path, one of the few locations in this deck, and last but not least, we have a Gundabad Wolf Rider. And this enemy doesn't hit for much, but when it attacks, we remove progress from the quest. Looks like we're going to be up against a total of 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 threats. We're going to end up generating 1, 2, 3, 4 progress on this phase, and that means we don't have to discard cards at random from our hand, but we will have to add an enemy back into play and discard our resources. So for travel, we're unable to go to Hidden Path, so let's move on to engagement. I suppose the simplest way to do this is Gundabad Climber to me, and the Wolf Rider to you.
Okay.
And we can just leave this archer here in the staging area since we can't really deal with it. Let's go ahead and deal out shadow cards as follows. How do you want to deal with the Wolf Rider? As if I didn't know. So looks like this shadow card is going to give Baragon -2 defense, so he's going to end up taking 1 point of damage from the Wolf Rider.
Okay.
And then for me, I'll declare Dane as the defender, and shadow card has no effect, fortunately. So Dane takes no damage. Before we do your attacks, let's go ahead and trigger that Gundabad Wolf Rider's forced effect. So pull one of these progress tokens off our current quest card, and how do you want to attack these enemies?
So Glorfindel will kill my enemy.
Alright, so 3 for 3, he is killed. His shadow card is going to be immediately discarded. And how about my guy?
And then Bard will swing over and kill yours.
Alright, so Bard drops his defense for 0 and then puts him at -3, so the Gundabad Climber is killed and his shadow card is discarded.
And I get to draw a card.
Right, Glamdring triggers. I suppose before we hit the end of the round, we might as well Control R to refresh. I'll take control of Bilbo Baggins. And since presumably neither of us have any refresh actions, we've got to remove all resources from all heroes' resource pools, and we have to add the topmost enemy in the discard pile to the staging area. Looks like the topmost enemy of the encounter discard pile is strategically going to be our Gundabad Climber. So I'm going to close out of that, and of course it is added as opposed to revealed, so we don't get rid of any progress tokens. But now that we've done all of that, at the beginning of the round before resources, which of these do we want as our active quest? I suppose 3?
Sure.
Alright, so hopefully we're not going to have to deal with adding more enemies time after time. So now let's do our resources, which you've already taken care of. I've yet to reach that 5 dwarf threshold. I'm going to go ahead and do a cram on Baragon, and I'm going to go ahead and do both of my leadership resources for Steward of Gondor unconventionally on Ori. Not ideal, but it is what it is. And I'm going to go ahead and play Biffer. So I play him. I've got 5 dwarf characters in play. He gains that response. I'm going to go ahead and draw 2 cards, and I ended up getting some pretty decent stuff. Including an attachment I wish I would have had before I played that Steward. But I think I'm going to go ahead and trigger that 1 resource off Bilbo Baggins to search through my deck. I could grab Orcrist or his magic ring. Why don't I go ahead and pull Orcrist to my hand, close and shuffle my deck, and I think I'm going to go ahead and put this across the table, and I'm going to throw that on Glorfindel. And that is going to be it for my planning. How about yours?
I'm not going to play anything.
Alright. I suppose that brings us to quest phase. So we're currently battling. I think what I'm going to do is 1, 4, 7, 8. And that's going to be it for me.
Okay. I'll send 5.
Alright, so going to be a grand total of 13. And let's see what we get. So encounter card number 1 is going to be this: choose a different quest to be the current quest until the end of the round if able. So our options are the Eastern Spur or the Defense of Ravenhill. But we've only got something like 4 committed to the quest if we pick our siege questing. So I guess do we want to choose the Eastern Spur again?
I guess so.
Alright, so that's kind of frustrating, but let's get rid of that. And of course it does surge to encounter card number 1, which is a Gundabad Climber. So this is going to be remove 1 progress from each quest card in play. And this of course gains surge to each player must search the encounter deck and discard pile for a goblin enemy and put it in play engaged with him. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's in the discard pile and what's in the encounter deck.
Give me something with 0, please. 0 defense.
For me, why don't I go ahead and pick another one of these Gundabad Climbers. I'll close and shuffle that. And for you, I'm going to go ahead and pick this Gundabad Wolf Rider once again.
Okay.
And it looks like that is going to satisfy the condition of this card. So I'll discard that, make sure our encounter deck is shuffled. So our final encounter card is another Hidden Path. So at the present moment, we got kicked over to Willpower Questing. So I've got 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 committed. Looks like a grand total of 11. We're up against 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that combined total of 12 threat means we're going to end up gaining 1 threat. For travel, we've got these nasty hidden paths, but yet again, we're unable to explore those. Hopefully I'll end up getting an attachment for your Glorfindel soon. For engagement, both of these climbers have to come down and engage me, but would you want to optionally engage one?
Sure.
Alright, so I'll bring one down to you, and I'll bring this one down to me. And let's see, for shadow cards, let's distribute these as follows. So, for my first Gundabad Climber, I think I'm going to have Dane as the defender. A shadow card is defending character gets, looks like -2 defense, so Dane is going to end up taking 1 point of damage. And, do you want to do any defending for me?
Sure.
Alright, so looks like Bard for this climber. Shadow effect is attacking enemy gets +1, but that doesn't do anything to Bard, so he takes no damage.
Alright. So first thing I'm going to do is play Straight Shot.
Okay, so...
on my Wolf Rider.
Alright, so it is going to be discarded, and its shadow card would have been attacking enemy makes an additional attack. So nice to see that gone.
Okay.
And then what do you want to do with your...
And then I'm going to Quick Strike with Glorfindel on my Climber.
Alright, so it is going to be killed. Its shadow card to be discarded is a Bodyguard of Bolg. So we'll want to make sure that's not the top card of the discard pile.
I get a resource technically, but it's going to go away, so not a huge deal.
Sure. But looks like Bard is going to get to take a shot, and he'll be able to draw you 1 card.
Yep.
Might as well just have Bard target this first climber here. So its defense again is 0, and then Bard does 5 points of damage. So it is killed, shadow card is discarded, and then that means you get to draw 1 card, which I think you've already done. All I can do for attacking is have Thorin put 1 point of damage on this climber here. And that is going to be it. So at the end of combat, I'll get rid of this 1 shadow card. And why don't we go ahead and do our refresh before the end of the round. I'll make you first player. I'll go ahead and toss control of Bilbo over to you. And once again, we've got to deplete all of our resources, and we've got to return the topmost enemy in the discard pile to the staging area, which is going to be our Ravenous Warg. So let me go ahead and set that there. And this is going to be the defending player has to declare the character he controls with the most damage as the defender. But we might as well go ahead and do our resource phase. I'll go ahead and put 1 resource on Bilbo for you, and at the present moment I've finally got my 5 dwarves, so I'm going to end up drawing 2 cards. We forgot to swap our current quest card, but as we've been doing, I suppose we might as well make Quest Phase 3 active, and that's your planning.
Then I will play a Veteran Axe Hand.
Alright. And anything else from you?
Nope, that's it.
For myself, I suppose I'll trigger Steward of Gondor right away, and I'll spend all of those resources to play Dori. I suppose the only other thing I'm going to play is I'll do 1 resource off of Dane for Song of Wisdom on Thorin, and I'll go ahead and do Mithril Shirt that I drew, and I'll slap that on Bilbo.
Okay.
And that's it for me.
All right, and just to sort of rewind a bit, in my head I was thinking, I want to try and save Baggins' resources to travel to Hidden Path, but then I forgot that all heroes lose resources, so let me just go ahead and spend that Baggins resource and look for a treasure. Might as well not let that go to waste.
Sure.
And I'll take out Sting to make Bilbo a little buffer.
Great.
Okay.
And I suppose I'll just take control of that for simplicity's sake. And that is going to bring us to the quest phase. So before you commit any characters, I'm going to go ahead and do one leadership resource for a sneak attack.
I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me.
And I'm going to go ahead and put Gandalf into play, and for his ability, I'm going to go ahead and deal 4 points of damage to that Ravenous Warg, just because I don't want to risk either of us losing a hero. Hopefully we don't end up drawing another one. But who are you going to commit to this battle quest?
I'll send Glorfindel for 5 and Bilbo for 2, so I'll send 7.
Alright, sounds pretty reasonable. I suppose I will do 9, and I think I'll go ahead and make it a grand total of 13 that I'm committing. So between the two of us, looks like we're doing 20. So let's see what we reveal. Encounter card number 1 is another hidden path. Good God. Encounter card number 2, awesome, not an orc. This is going to be Ruins of Dale. So this is going to be remove 2 progress from stage 3B at the end of each round if able, and we can spend 1 Baggins resource to travel here. But of course you spent that Baggins resource, but not the end of the world by any means. So this is kind of nice because I've got the feeling we're going to be putting a little bit of progress on Quest Phase 3. So 2, 11, 13, 15, we're going to end up making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 progress on that stage. For travel, once again, we don't have any options, and it looks like this might be a little bit of a roadblock, preventing us from doing any siege questing. So, for engagement, do you want the Gundabad Archer?
Yeah, sure.
Alright, so I'll bring him down to you. About time we get rid of this guy. For shadow cards, those go as follows. Gandalf, of course, bounces back to my hand. And how do you want to deal with him?
Baragon.
Alright, so shadow card is nothing. Another god-awful location. Baragon takes no damage. For me, I'm going to go ahead and have Dane as my blocker. The shadow card is going to be +1 attack, and that is not going to do anything. So, how do you want to attack your enemies?
Glorfindel will kill mine.
Alright, so it is going to be killed straight away, and I guess you gain 1 resource that's going to go away.
And then Bard will kill yours.
Alright, so it looks like Bard himself swings for 5. I could have had Thorin help out, but the Gundabad Climber is very killed, and that means you get to draw another card. Alright, so we might as well refresh before we hit the end of the round. I'm currently at threat 35, which is a little bit scary. I'll transfer control of Bilbo to myself, and now all we have to do is discard all resources from our hero's resource pools.
Yep.
So I'll strip that 1 resource off my characters. Looks like you already took yours off and replaced them. And of course at the end of the round we've got to remove 2 progress from stage 3B. So let's get rid of 2 of those. So at the beginning of the round we have to pick another quest phase to make our active quest. So I'm not sure I could do too terribly much for like a siege questing. We're losing those progress tokens pretty quickly from Quest Phase 3, and at the same time we don't have too terribly much on Quest Phase 2, so do we want to maybe keep Quest Phase 3 our active?
Yeah, sure.
Alright, maybe I'll end up getting lucky and drawing a mount here, but let me do my resources. 2 for Thorin, draw a couple cards from Ori, did not end up getting my mount. Let me do a couple resources for Ori though. I think I'm just going to go ahead and do a We Are Not Idle for 0, just to draw another card, which ended up actually being something fantastic. So I will spend 1 resource off of Ori, and I'm going to go ahead and put a Legacy of Durin on Thorin. I think the last thing I'm going to do is I'll spend 3 leadership resources for Longbeard Elder, and then that means I get to draw 1 more card. I'll pay 1 leadership resource for Erebor Record Keeper. I get to draw 1 more card. And I ended up getting your favorite card, Matthew. Maybe I'll play this at the end of the round. But that's it for me, and what are you going to do?
I will put the hunting bow on someone. I was thinking Glorfindel, but I don't know, does Bard need to be any beefier?
I mean, he's shooting for 7 by himself, which is enough to kill any enemy.
Alright, so I'll put this on Glorfindel.
Alright, basically makes him equal to Bard.
Yeah.
And anything else?
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay. Well, that is going to bring us to questing. So we're still doing battle. I suppose I could do 9, 10, 12, 15. I suppose I could do something like 18. Although, I think I'm just going to send 14.
Okay, I will send 5.
Looks like it's going to be a grand total of 19 that we're sending. And before I reveal those encounter cards, let me add one resource to Bilbo that I believe we missed at the beginning of the turn, since I certainly didn't trigger his ability. So let's see what we get. Encounter card number 1 is a Ravenous Wargs, and this is going to cause some problems. It is a creature, so it doesn't trigger Surge. Encounter card number 2 is Bodyguard of Bolg, which is going to trigger Surge, and it surges to Gundabad Climber, which is going to be 1 progress from each quest phase, and that is going to be that.
Alright, so I will play Hands Upon the Bow.
Okay, and who's your target?
I will go ahead and kill the Ravenous Warg.
Alright, probably the safest play, even though that's not the most dangerous opponent.
Sadly not an orc, so I don't get to draw a card.
Yeah. But looks like we're up against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 14, 15, 16 total. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3 progress on our active quest card, which means that at the end of the round we're not going to have that stripped down to nothing. So for travel, I guess since quest phase 3B is the current quest, we can just spend 1 resource off Bilbo to make that our active location, finally maybe get rid of something. And then that leads us to engagement.
Okay.
I suppose the only logical way to do this is to pull the bodyguard down to me, because of Glorfindel's bow, and Gundabad Climber to you. So doing shadow cards, we'll do those as follows. And, just like the Dol Guldur Beastmaster, when Bodyguard of Bolg attacks, it gets an additional shadow card for each quest card in play with no progress, which is going to be 1. I'm going to have Dane as my defender, and let's see how this works out. So Shadow Card 1 is going to be if this attack destroys a character, which hopefully it won't, and Shadow Card 2 is deal 1 damage to defending character for each quest stage in play with no progress. That's going to be 1 damage immediately to Dane, and then another point of damage because 4 attack is greater than his 3 defense. But it looks like I fortunately survived, and how do you want to deal with your Gundabad Climber?
Baragon.
Alright, and Shadow Card is if this attack destroys a character, which it's not going to.
Yeah.
So, attacking back.
Glorfindel will snipe over to your side.
Alright, so he gets a grand total of 7 attacks, so the bodyguard is destroyed. And those shadow cards are gone.
And again, frustratingly, I get a resource only to lose it once again.
Right.
And Dane is not ready, so my...
Well, actually, why don't I go ahead and trigger my Erebor Record Keeper to ready Dane?
Well, he still doesn't do a ton, but he could do 1 damage.
Sure. So, unfortunately, I can't swing across the table to help you out, but end of combat, the Vanguard is going to be discarded, and I suppose we might as well refresh. So, let's go ahead and control R. I'll transfer Bilbo over to you. At the end of the round, I've got to strip 2 progress off of our Battle in the Dale, and then that is going to be that. I guess just because we still haven't drawn our mount, we still have a ton of threats sitting there in the staging area, we might as well make our first quest phase active once again. So let's now go ahead and do our resources and draw a couple cards. I'll put 1 resource on Bilbo. I'll go ahead and trigger Steward of Gondor. I'm going to do 2 resources off of Thorin. And I'm going to go ahead and do Erebor Hammersmith, even though that cram is still in play. Do you have any attachment worth returning?
Nope.
Alright. But that does mean I get to draw one card. Ended up not being too terribly useful. I guess that's going to be it for my turn.
I will play pay 2 for a Defender of Ross,
Great.
and that's it for me.
Fantastic. That's certainly going to help with siege questing, so awesome. Okay, well, for questing, since it's willpower, I suppose I could do 7, 8, 9, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18. A grand total of 20, I suppose?
Alright, I'll send 6.
Alright, let me exhaust Bilbo for you. Before we reveal some encounter cards, why don't I go ahead and step back one character, just to give me a defender here. So, we're going to be sending a modified 24, and let's see what we get. So encounter card number 1 is going to be a Dark Bats, doesn't surge. Encounter card number 2 is going to be each enemy engaged with a player makes an immediate attack. Do not deal shadow cards for this attack, and that is pretty much the wimpiest thing ever.
So Defender of Ramas will defend for me.
Alright, and he takes no
happens.
damage, yeah. So we're going to be up against 1, 2, 11, 13 threats. We're going to end up making 11 progress. 2 is going to go on Ruins of Dale. So I'll Control V to add that to our victory display, and that is going to put 10 points on our current quest phase.
Okay.
Oh my god.
What?
I just got an octagon has stopped working. Alright, so as you guys saw, obviously OCTGN experienced a little bit of a crash. Fortunately, Matthew and I, between the two of us, were able to take a lot of screenshots, so we've reconstructed the encounter discard pile from top to bottom. We've kept our staging area, we've got all of our characters and everything else in play as they were. All damage, resources, everything else is accounted for, so I don't think that we missed anything. Our hands have been reconstructed, so with that said, why don't we go ahead and ensure that our player decks are both shuffled. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle the encounter deck, so everything should be perfectly fair.
Okay.
And at this point, why don't we go ahead and resume our game. So, for travel, we don't have the Baggins resources to go to any of these locations. For engagement, this Dark Bats, I think I'm going to have it come down and engage with me. Let's go ahead and do Shadow cards. I'm the first player, and to deal with this attack, I'm going to go ahead and have my Erebor Hammersmith as the defender. And the Shadow card is the one and only copy of Eagles of the Misty Mountains.
What a waste.
So, yeah, definitely a big waste. That would have been so much cooler to get it in a different way, but 3 damage, the bats are going to be immediately killed. And of course, that eagle is going to be discarded, so really a shame, but awesome ally to see go.
Yeah.
But how do you want to deal with your climber?
Baragon.
Alright, so its shadow card is if defending character is destroyed, which of course it is not, and that's it. How do you want to attack back?
Bard.
Alright, so Bard is more than enough with that attachment, so your climber is destroyed, and you get to draw yet another card.
That I cannot pay for.
I suppose that's going to bring us to the end of the round, so we might as well raise up our threats. I'll go ahead and take control of Bilbo, and at the end of the round, all we have to do is dump all of our resources. So I've got to get rid of my 4, and at the beginning of the round, we can pick one of these to make our active quest. So, are we thinking we want to try and siege?
We might as well, I guess.
Alright, so let's take a little bit of a risk. Let's make the Defense of Raven Hill our active quest, and let's see how we do. So for our resources, let's go ahead and trigger all of that. I draw 2 cards. I think there was a little confusion between Matthew and myself as to who is the first player, but I think we had it confused, so I should be the first player at the present moment. Looks like I drew my one copy of the Feely Keely combo that I do not want, which kind of sucks. I'll put one resource on Bilbo here. I think I'm going to go ahead and do a We Are Not Idle, so let me get rid of that. I'll draw one card. Didn't end up being too terribly useful. I'm going to go ahead and spend Bilbo's one resource to look through my deck, and I'm going to go ahead and grab that magic ring. Looks like both of those copies of Asphalloth were pretty close to the bottom. So let me close and shuffle my deck. I'll go ahead and put that ring on Bilbo. And I think that's all I'm going to be doing for my turn. So how about you?
I will pay 2 for a Watcher of the Brunnen to help with sieging.
Okay.
And that's all I can do.
Alright, well, for siege questing, I suppose we might as well send almost as much as humanly possible here, so I will do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'll spend one leadership resource for a sneak attack.
I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me.
And I'm going to go ahead and pick Gandalf to make that 16. And I'm going to go ahead and use both of my record keepers to ready 2 of my dwarves there. So I've sent 16.
And what's Gandalf's effect?
Good question. I think I'm going to just draw 3 cards, which ended up not being that great, but I'll do a Darren's Runes.
Okay.
And I finally got our horse friend, so let me discard a card, get rid of those runes, and that is my questing. How about yourself?
So I will send 8, 9, 10, 11.
Alright, so it's going to be a grand total of 27. Hopefully that's going to be enough. And let's see what we're up against. So encounter card number 1... is each player must search the encounter deck and discard pile for a goblin enemy and put it into play engaged with him. Then shuffle the encounter deck.
Well, at least it's not adding threat.
Yeah, so let me take a look at the encounter deck. There's a couple of those nasty goblin vanguards left. And then a bunch of, locations. Let me close and shuffle that. I think maybe I should just look for... I think I'm just going to go ahead and give myself a Gundabad Climber and yourself a Gundabad Climber. So 2 attack, 2 defense, 2 hit points. Pretty pathetic.
Okay.
Their when revealed doesn't even go off because they're put into play. They're not revealed. So not a big deal. Let's get rid of this card. Encounter card number 2 is going to be Raven Hill. So this is going to pull progress off of our current nasty quest phase.
Right. And of course we just spent the Baggins resource for the ring, although you could trigger the ring so we can travel here this turn.
Yeah, I suppose I might as well. So in between quest resolution, in between staging and quest resolution, I'll go ahead and do that. Add 1 resource to Bilbo. Looks like we're up against 11, 13. We're going to end up making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Grand total of 14 progress on that last phase.
Alright.
So I guess I need not have been as worried as I was. Gandalf is going to bounce back to my hand. For travel, let's go ahead and make Raven Hill our active location. I'll spend 1 resource off of Bilbo. And that is going to lead us to combat, since there's no engagement to be done. For this enemy, I suppose I'll defend with Dane. And no shadow card.
Alright, I'll
How do you
defend
want to deal
with my veteran axe hand.
Alright. And it's going to be if the attack destroys a character, but it's not going to, so he will take 1 point of damage.
Alright.
And then
I will snipe over to your side with Glorfindel.
Okay, so Gundabad Climber is going to be killed, and looks like he gains 1 resource
that
is not going to go away. Yeah.
And then Bard will kill mine.
Alright, and that is going to be an additional card for you.
Nice. Alright, very good.
Okay, so I suppose we might as well Control R to refresh. The only thing that happens at the end of the round is there's going to be 2 fewer progress on our active location, but that doesn't matter too much, seeing as how we've still got plenty on it.
Right.
I'll make you first player. I'll transfer Bilbo to your side of the table. I'll do 1 resource for him, and 1 resource on each of my characters.
Alright, so I can finally play. I've had it in my hand since the beginning. Unexpected Courage on Bard for even more attack goodness.
Okay.
And I will play...
Well, and I suppose at the beginning of the round, do we want to make our quest
Oh,
phase
right, we have
3?
to pick. Yeah, we can do the middle one.
But it's the only one that makes sense, so...
Right. And so I will... I'm not going to play any more allies, so I'm good.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and do this now. I will trigger the magic ring. I always want to call it the One Ring, and to give Bilbo a resource.
Okay.
So hopefully we can clear the Raven Hill and then travel to one of these hidden paths.
Sure.
Oh, I gotta raise my threat. All right.
So I'll spend 2 resources to throw yet another attachment on Glorfindel.
Oh, perfect.
So we can finally start to get rid of some of these. Then the only other stuff I think I'm going to do is I'll do 3 resources for a Glow-in, and I'm going to go ahead and trigger that ability to put 2 resources on Bard. I, of course, draw a card because of Legacy of Durin, and I think I'm going to spend 2 lore resources to put out a Miner of the Iron Hills. So I'll draw 1 more card, and that's not really doing me too much good, but I think that's going to be it for my turn.
Okay.
And after I play that Miner, it actually looks like maybe I got confused at some point. I'm going to have to put Glowin's resources on Thorin, so my bad about that, but I definitely want 3 leadership resources open for the quest phase here. But I suppose we might as well commit characters, so we're currently doing battle questing. And what are you looking to send?
I can send Bilbo for 2.
Okay.
Glorfindel for 5, so that's 7. I'll send my Axe Hand for 3, that's 10.
Okay.
And that's all I'll do.
Sure, and I'll be able to pick up the slack, believe me. So I will do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 14, 16, 19, 23, 25, and I'm going to go ahead and do 3 resources for a Lure of Moria, and that readies all of my dwarf characters and your Axe Hand.
Okay.
So it looks like that's going to be a grand total of 35 that we've sent to the quest, and let's see what we reveal. So encounter card number 1 is going to be the front gate, so this is going to pull progress tokens from stage 2B if able. And encounter card number 2 is going to be a Dark Bats, so there's not even a surge opportunity. Looks like we're up against 1, 2, 3, 4, 13, 15 threats.
Alright, so I will trigger Asphalot. Oh, I don't control it.
So one of those hidden paths is gone, which means we're only going to be up against 12 threats. So we're going to end up making 23 progress.
We didn't need Asphalot after all.
I guess not, yeah. So 2 are going to be soaked up by our active location here. And it looks like that's going to leave 21 progress for our current quest phase. So that is going to put us at 24 out of 8. And at the present moment, we've satisfied 8 or more progress tokens on each of our 3 quest phases. So, at this point, we pass on to Quest Phase 5, and this reads, when revealed, each player must search the encounter deck and discard pile for a copy of Bodyguard of Bolg and add it to the staging area, then shuffle the encounter deck. We cannot place progress on this stage, and while Bolg is in the staging area, he's considered engaged with the first player. So all of my dwarves here aren't going to be able to do too much attacking for you, but at least I can do some defending and maybe help get rid of those bodyguards.
Or the bats.
Or those nasty bats. So it looks like in the encounter deck there's 1 Bodyguard of Bolg. Might as well get rid of that so we don't have to deal with it later. And then I'll go ahead and pull one of these out of the encounter deck, discard pile, and I'll add them both to the staging area. Alright, so this leads us to travel, and at the present moment, really all we can do is move to one of these hidden paths, since we don't have the 3 Baggins resources necessary to go to the front gate, and our ring is exhausted, so shall we go to hidden path?
Sure.
Alright, might as well get that out of the staging area. I'll go ahead and collapse these. I'll pull those resources off of Bilbo, and that leads us to engagement. So I think I want to take a bodyguard of Bolg, and then we've basically got to do engagement checks where this bodyguard is going to come to you, and I suppose I can take these ridiculous bats.
Okay.
So why don't we go ahead and distribute some shadow cards. Again, he's going to be getting 1 additional shadow card when he attacks. How do you want to deal with your bodyguard of Bolg?
I'll have I'll have Baragon defend.
Alright, so he gets 1 additional shadow card. Shadow card number 1 is going to be attach this to the defending character. So that'll be -1 defense.
Okay.
And shadow card number 2 is going to be attacking enemy gets basically +1 attack. So he's going to be attacking for a total of 5. That would be 2 points of damage to Baragon. I suppose not the end of the world.
No.
Alright, so Baragon is practically dead, but at least he's alive. For my attacks, Dark Bats, I'll have the Erebor Hammersmith yet again defend. No Eagle of the Misty Mountain this time, so it's going to be 2 points of damage to my Erebor Hammersmith, and then of course the bat itself becomes a condition attachment stuck to him, and we get rid of that fighting among friends. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and declare Biffer as the defender against Bodyguard of Bolg. And let me go ahead and see what I get. So this is going to be, if this attack destroys a character, remove 0 progress from the current quest. He's swinging for 4. Biffer is going to take 3 points of damage, but Hardy Leadership means he survives. I was actually kind of hoping he'd be killed. So now that we've dealt with these attacks, unfortunately, I forgot that all of a sudden Bolg suddenly does something, so he is engaged with you. Let's go ahead and give him a shadow card, and how do you want to deal with his attack?
I'll do my Veteran Axe Hand.
Alright, so it looks like the Veteran Axe Hand is gonna end up taking 6 damage. So the Veteran is killed. And now for attacks. What do you want to do?
So Glorfindel will swing over and kill yours.
Okay, so he's going to shoot for basically 7. So mine is gone.
He gets a resource. And then Bard, I'll just swing with everybody that I've got left to attack mine.
Alright, looks like that's exactly 7, and that's going to be enough to kill your bodyguard. So
I get to draw a card. And then I will ready Bard. Although there's no point, though, because he... Oh, no, there is. He's got the treasure. And so then now Bard will attack Bolg.
Alright, so it's not a ranged attack, but since he's swinging for 5, Bolg is going to end up taking a couple points of damage. So I suppose that's really all we can do for combat. Let me get rid of Bolg's shadow card. So, at the present moment, why don't we go ahead and Control R to refresh. If you'd be so kind as to make me first player, I'll take control of Bilbo here. I'll go ahead and draw a couple cards. I got another horse ally. I will do my resources. I suppose for my turn, I'll pay 1 lore resource to do another Erebor Record Keeper. So I'll draw 1 card. And I'm going to do a total of 3 resources for a Longbeard Elder. And I'll draw 1 more card. And I think I'll do 2 more lore resources for a Miner, and I'll draw 1 more card, and I've run out of resources for another readying ability. But that is all I'm going to do, and what about your planning?
I'm going to pay 2 for a Citadel Plate.
Very timely.
And 1 for a Vassal.
Alright, great.
And that's it for me.
Okay, so at the present moment we've got to move on to questing. We've got 1 card left in our encounter deck, but of course we're going to have to end up reshuffling that anyway. So
I'll go ahead and trigger Asphalot now just to get rid of the hidden path.
Sure, that's gone. So we're only up against 4 threat in the staging area. And for committing characters to the quest, I suppose I'll do... like 10.
Alright, I'll send 3.
Alright, so that should be more than enough. Grand total of 13. Let's see what we get. So encounter card number 1 is going to be Ruins of Dale.
Didn't we clear this?
Looks like this is one of those mistakes that persisted through our having to reconstruct the deck. So this should have been in our victory display instead of just left in the encounter deck.
Oh, yeah.
But our encounter deck has now reshuffled. We hit a perfect 0 with all of our shadow cards next turn. So actual encounter card number 1 is going to be, when revealed until the end of the round, exhausted characters get -1 to all of their attributes. Do you happen to have a cancellation?
Sure don't.
Alright, well, that's just going to be something annoying to keep track of. I suppose that's going to strip 4 from our total committed to the quest, and I'll just leave that in the staging area to remind us it's there. Encounter card number 2 is going to be Vanguard of Bolg, which is currently all 2s for its attributes, and of course it surges to a Misty Mountain Eagle. So the first player can spend 2 Baggins resources to take control of it, or discard it to get rid of a non-unique enemy.
Did you not give back Bilbo a resource?
It looks like I did forget to give Bilbo a resource.
Although we could just discard him to get rid of the Vanguard.
Yeah. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use Bilbo's magic ring to add 1 resource to Bilbo, and I'll spend 2 resources to take control of the Misty Mountain Eagle here.
Okay. So I'm going to pay 1 to Hands Upon the Bow.
Okay.
To attack Bolg, just for fun.
Okay, so that's going to be, looks like 5 plus 1 minus 1, so it's going to be 2 more points of damage on Bolg.
I'll go ahead and ready him back up with Unexpected Courage.
And I suppose there's no reason not to do that before that attack resolves, so since he's not exhausted, that'll have given him an additional attack strength. So, looks like Bolg is at 3 hit points. That is going to bring us to the end of questing. So looks like we're up against a total of 6. We're going to make 1 progress on our location, and then the other 2 are going to fizzle on our final quest card. So for travel, we can't go to the front gate. For engagement, this Vanguard of Bolg, I might as well go ahead and just... why don't I go ahead and give that to you, since your defending allies aren't going to be doing too much. For shadow cards, we of course start with Bolg with his engagement cost of 50, and then the Vanguard. So let's see here. I've got to deal with mine first. I'm going to have Biffer defend against Bolg. His shadow card is nothing. How fitting that the bodyguard is trying to help out Bolg there. So Biffer is going to be killed, and then how do you want to deal with that?
I'll do my defender.
Alright, so the shadow card here is a whole lot of nothing, and your defender is, of course, not killed. For attacks, all characters are going to get -1, but let's see how much we can conjure up.
For fun, I'm going to send all 3 of my range characters to attack Bolg.
Alright, so let's total this up here. No reason that I can't help out a little bit, so I will add 1, 2, 3, 4... I'll go ahead and spend 1 leadership resource for a sneak attack.
I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me.
And I'll go ahead and put Gandalf into play, and he'll add 3 to that. So it looks like I'm at a running total of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10... and you add 12, so that's going to be a grand total of 22. So it looks like he's going to end up taking 19 points of damage, and he is going to end up being at 24 damage. So a massive -16. It does not matter that these Vanguard of Bolg are sitting here. I imagine they'll probably disband shortly after their leader has just been killed. So at this point, we've satisfied the victory condition of the scenario. We have destroyed Bolg. So Matthew, any final thoughts about the Battle of Five Armies?
I think this is a great quest. It's definitely tense in the early game when you're either having to get rid of cards or get rid of resources. Was certainly frustrating having that unexpected courage in my hand from the get-go, and lots of other spirit things. I just couldn't pay for stuff. So the resource card to me is the most heinous, because if I can pump out a bunch of allies, the dealing with an extra enemy isn't too bad. But certainly you kind of have to balance things carefully early on. And once you sort of get them under control, then you can sort of steamroll over Bolg and his bodyguards. And definitely fun to get the Misty Mountain Eagle there at the very end. I'm glad he was able to come down on our side. I like this quest a whole lot. In some ways, it's similar to Siege in that you're sort of running around the different places, but it's still, I think, distinct enough in the mechanics that it feels fresh, and it's not just a repeat of the Siege of Karandros. And so I really like this one. It's really top notch.
This is definitely an interesting and fun scenario. I've kind of traditionally not had the most difficult experiences playing up against this one, but particularly if you get some Vanguard of Bolg in the very early game, before you start to establish that foothold against the encounter deck, it can be very difficult. So our beginning of this game didn't end up being too bad, so we certainly were able to just put a ton of allies into play and take care of things. Playing this deck solo, I've been able to beat this quest, and it certainly doesn't seem like that big of a deal for me to discard resources, which I feel is a strength of this quest, just because different decks excel in different areas, and being able to approach this one successfully from a number of different vantage points just makes it more replayable, makes it more interesting. So there's definitely a lot of nastiness that this encounter deck can bring to bear, but overall this was a pretty fun playthrough. I think we showcased what the encounter deck can do fairly well, and I certainly enjoyed the process of getting there, even in the face of that frustrating crash. But I can't really think of too much else to say about this quest, so what did you think about these Saga expansions as a whole? I guess, at the present moment, we've had 6 scenarios between Overhill and Underhill and On the Doorstep, not counting the special Gen Con Battle of Laketown scenario, but what are your thoughts about just this entire experience?
Right, I think I mentioned this in one of our earlier playthroughs from the Saga expansions, that I was so excited when these were first announced. Seems like forever ago now. The Hobbit is definitely a great book. It's the one I've read the most. Lord of the Rings, I maybe shouldn't even admit it, I've only read through the books once, and that was back in high school. I haven't been able to truck through them since, though I am rereading Fellowship of the Ring as we speak. But all the quests are good. I know that the Riddle quest gets a lot of hate, and that the Lonely Mountain quest gets a lot of hate, but maybe slightly less than the riddles. But I certainly enjoyed them in our progression series, and if you're making good decks that are doing what the quest demands, then the quests, those 2 particular quests, aren't that bad. I certainly like the first 2 quests of the first Saga expansion, either dealing with the trolls or the stone giants is kind of cool, and I definitely like Flies and Spiders and Battle of the Five Armies. Those 4 to me are really exciting, but again, I didn't dislike those other 2 quests. Definitely the treasures are super fun. When I played multiplayer games, and I've had an unexpected courage or 2 on Bard, multiplayer meaning 3 or 4 player games for this particular quest, Bard is just killing orcs left and right. He's got some treasures on him, so I'm drawing cards. So I think Bard, again, as we said in our player card review, shines a little bit more in 3 or 4 player games, which is what I tend to play when I play this game in person at my local game store. But he did okay in this particular quest. We just didn't have as many enemies to deal with as we would there. But I don't know. I like the Saga expansion idea. I think it was great. I think they really nailed the theme on all of these quests. And I'm really looking forward to playing through the Lord of the Rings proper in those Saga expansions.
Yeah, I definitely can't think of how differently they could have done it. Certainly the riddle mechanic, just how to implement that in the card game, was very unique, but at the same time I'm not too sure off the top of my head I can brainstorm a better way of doing it. I certainly was dreading making that video, as I mentioned back when we covered that scenario, but it ended up actually being a lot of fun. So, certainly as a player who kind of avoided that scenario in particular, it didn't end up being all that bad. Our playthrough of the Lonely Mountain, of course we only got 2 out of the 5 treasures, but that itself didn't end up being that bad. There was obviously a mistake I made in that one where I was a little too free with my spirit resources, so when it really came down to it and I needed those, I didn't have them at my disposal, but I certainly think a 5 treasure victory is very doable, and I'd be interested in doing that in the future. I think overall I've had a great experience playing all of these. Ever since our errata came out, changing some of those We Must Away Ere Break of Day cards so that the treasures are so much more attainable, I think that quest in particular is an absolute blast. Over the Misty Mountains Grim is not necessarily the most interesting quest, but just having to deal with those massive hosts of goblins is very interesting. The riddle quest is just so brutally difficult at times. I remember at one point we had something like 8 to 10 enemies in our staging area and we still pulled through, so certainly a lot of memorable gameplay experiences. The Battle of Five Armies here certainly seemed like it maybe dragged on a little bit because of our inability to push through that quest phase 4 up until we finally decided to take a risk and just tear through it. But overall, I had fun here, I had fun through all the Saga expansions, and just like you, I'm looking forward to what's next to come. So, I think that about covers it. So thank you guys so much for checking out another entry in our series. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already. Feel free to leave us a comment below letting us know what your own experiences have been playing through the Battle for Five Armies, any of these Saga expansion quests. Feel free to leave us any tips as to how Matthew or myself could have modified our decks to be even more effective against this scenario. So, next up is going to be a review of the 1 new hero and 9 new player cards of the first of our Against the Shadow adventure packs, the Steward's Fear. So we'll see you again soon.